Welcome everybody. This will be our 52nd webinar, and I'm very happy to have a new speaker, Henrik Helgesen, a long time professional in our world. I think, well, our hair color is a little bit different, but getting close to each other. So Henrik, very welcome to be here, and I'm also interested in what you're going to tell. Of course, we talked about a little bit, but I'm really interested in your story. To give the user a chance, I think it's the title as such already is a good message. The fact that we build something that works doesn't mean it works for the user. So, well, looking forward to that. Before we going to listen to you, Henrik, as always, I'm going to through a couple of practical slides. Most of the people looking at the list of people that got in already, I think everybody knows, but just for the people that got in the first time, your microphone is muted. Please be very welcome to post your questions. You don't have a microphone, but through the question window you can put them there. And me, I'll be the moderator for today, like many times. My name is Luc van Vugt, and well, welcome from all around the globe to join here today again. It will be recorded, and probably this evening I will have it uploaded to YouTube. We're the numbers are growing. We're already getting halfway 700, 800 subscriptions, so I'm very happy with that. If you haven't subscribed yet to our newsletter, use the URL here, and you get updated on what's happening next. And what's happening next, by the way, I sent out a newsletter yesterday. 2 new webinars have been added. Of course, the one of today is still on the newsletter also. The one that Waldo is going to do in 2 weeks' time was already communicated a couple of weeks ago. Last week I got to talk with Freddie about the, well, actually there was some connection on the previous webinar by Christopher Krieger. I was very pleased with that, and I asked him, okay, your new project, is that something for a webinar? And he immediately agreed, so Freddie will be on that. And then I got to speak to Kenny Pontoppidan, and he's going to do a next one on the July 5th. It might be the last one for this season. It's around the time that my holidays is going to happen, when, well, 2 weeks later, the 19th of July. I have to look if I'm going to schedule something, but then we'll pick up after my summer holidays, probably start of December. So feel free to subscribe to these already, and be welcome to join, of course. And any time again, of course, I'll ask you, do you have a topic, any idea to present yourself, like Henrik wrote in his Twitter or tweet? What was the hashtag? First, long time listener, first time presenter. Well, anybody can become that. Whatever age you are, whatever story you have, I think we all have a story. You need to take a threshold to start presenting. That's true. But be welcome, and I'll be, I could be your coach on that if you want me to. Before I'm going to hand over to you, Henrik, I always thank our sponsor, for NAF. So happy that they're here, and just talked to Jan Sillerman. We're going to continue in the next season to collaborate on this again. So we'll have a next season with more interesting topics. So, going to make you presenter, Henrik. This should mean that you'll be able to go and share your screen. Yeah, clear. It's there.
Thank you so much, Luc, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, so I am going to talk a little about giving the user a chance. And what I mean by that is, you know, over the years, we've all done solutions that work just fine. But the user, whenever they do something, they get error messages left and right, simply because there isn't either good flow or anything else. So, a little bit about me. My name is Henrik Helgesen. I'm originally from Denmark. I currently live in Los Angeles, California, and I wanted to say hello from sunny California, but it's so early that the sun isn't quite up yet. I started in the good old days on a Navigator 3.04 on a Unix machine in the mid-90s. I've basically worked in all aspects of life, and when I say that, I truly do mean that. I worked with my first project in the US was a company that owned funeral homes and cemeteries, and I currently work with the world's largest donor sperm bank and donor egg bank. So, and I've worked with everything in between. I am a little bit of a stickler for rules, and part of that is to create that familiarity on the users. And I've often been called the GUI police. So back in the days, I would spot from far away if a button was the wrong size or positioned incorrectly. And as I said, Luke, I'm a long-time listener. I've been watching a lot of these webinars over the years, and I guess I finally got the nuts to do a presentation. So here we are. Another fun fact about me: I'm a hockey fan, Los Angeles King, and that's actually how I met my wife. And I actually proposed on the jumbotron. And the picture you see there was from one of my trips to BC Tech Days, and I'm also a big Tintin fan, so I had to take this picture. Yes, I am a dinosaur, as David Singleton would say. I've been in this world for a long time. As I said, as developers, we tend to make it work. We are given a task, and we tend to do it. And but many times, that only works if the user does exactly what we expect them to do. So what can we do about that? Well, there's different things. One of the things we can do is prevent bad data from being created. So as I'm sure most of you know, there's on the field on the table you can set this property called not blank. Now, what some people forget is setting a field to not blank really have no meaning if it's a non-primary key field, because you will still be allowed to insert the record, but you're going to have some issues if you try and clear the value on a non-primary key field. So preventing the bad data, and as you can see here on my screen as well, the user will be presented with an error message, and that's a nice indicator that's saying, nope, you have to do something. Here's another way, another feature that I see very underutilized, and I know in part of making this presentation, I actually found a bug in the base product. But on the page, on the fields, you can actually set this property called show mandatory to true or false for that matter. But true means you're going to get this red asterisk on there. Again, that's going to give the user a visual indication that in order for me to proceed with this record or take action on this record, I need to make sure that these fields are populated. Now, it's also important to know that just because you set a field to show mandatory, that is all it does. There is no validation whatsoever on this. You can have show mandatory in all fields, and the user can clear them. They can set them to whatever. There's no validation. That is up to you as a developer to do. But the point of that is you should then be giving some error messaging or handling of that if all that required data is not set. Another one that I see very underutilized is the ellipsis. It's the one that gives you 3 dots, but you don't do three periods in the caption. you set the property called ellipsis to true. And basically, the official documentation for this is it's basically an indicator to the user that something is going to pop up that you now need to act on. Meaning there is a request page or something similar that's going to pop up when you press that button. My explanation to users generally is, if you see the 3 dots, you can press it. Nothing bad is going to happen because you will be able to back yourself out of it. If you on my screenshot here is from the sales order screen. You can post and send, post batch, or preview posting does not ask you anything. It just performs the action. But as I said, if you have an ellipsis, that means nothing bad is going to happen. If you do it, you can reverse course, and if it's not there, it means something is going to happen. Another visual indicator that you can do is set the enabled to true or false, and it's a good one to use when you have some fields that are practically parameters to another field. So in this case, on the planning tab on the item card, there are different values that are used when you calculate your requisition worksheet based on the reordering policy, right? So if my reordering policy is fixed reorder quantity, well, the minimum inventory is irrelevant for that calculation. So we might as well disable that field. If we change it to order, well, none of this, the parameters are relevant. So they are now set to disabled or enabled false. And lastly, if you set it to maximum quantity, well, now the reorder quantity is irrelevant because we only care about the minimum inventory and the reorder point. The other way of doing this is you can also hide fields dynamically by setting the visible property on a field or on a group. Now, that is, I take that with a grain of salt because if you change the visible kind of on the fly, fields are going to jump back and forth, move around, and that's really going to be confusing for the user. That's where I'm a much bigger fan of using the enabled property for that fact. The visible, I think, is good for card pages where you already know what is relevant, what is not relevant. And where I've seen good uses of this is on credit card apps, like what is it? Some fields are relevant based on the transaction type. It may be relevant based on the card issuer. It may be relevant based on the gateway you're using. So being able to do that now, instead of maintaining 5, 7, 10 different pages, you have one page you manage and set changes the visibility, and you have everything in one place from a development point of view, while at the same time creating stuff for the users to work with. The next one I want to talk about is showing that something is happening. And what I mean by that is actually show the user, as you can see up here, they're working on it, that something is happening. So if something is going to be, if you're processing something that is going to take, and my general rule is, if it's going to take you more than 1 second, or potentially take you more than 1 second, show the user that something is happening. And you can do that using the dialog variable, and this one actually allows you to communicate with the user, but actually, more importantly, it gives you a cancel button. Now, again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And when it comes to this, it's important to know that window.update actually takes some resources. So there's no need to do a Windows update, 100 times in 1 second. So you really should kind of keep track of that as well. So this is what happens out of the box today. If you run something, after a couple of seconds, the user will get this working on it. It's not very helpful to the user. More importantly, they can't stop it. So I have a gift for you. As some of you know, I've created a little BCAL toolbox on GitHub, and what I've done in here is I have a dialog helper, and on that I also have a progress bar, because I realized when I was doing something that the good old progress bar was no longer existing. So you can download this. It's open source, and it's relatively easy to use. You can see I have a screenshot here of some code. I set I do my open window, and I just pass in my record number and the total, and my process here basically takes care of the rest. If you look at the end here, I have this comma true. That's basically what gives you this down here, where I will show you how long have we been doing this and how much estimated time is left. And that's simple math. How long have we done it? How far are we? And we do some division there. Another thing that I find important is to follow some standard nomenclature. And what I mean by that is you don't call a field customer ID. It is customer number, right? NO in BC. The same thing. Don't type in the field number. Spell it out. Use the standard nomenclature. Don't use the word client. Don't use the word material. Stuff like that. The same rule pertains to actions, action groups. I've actually seen apps that has a little arbitrary app identifier as a prefix to all of their action groups and action items. And to me, it's kind of like, now your solution basically scream that, hey, I'm a special app. I have nothing to do with this with Business Central per se. I'm a little plugin. I mean, as I say, it's basically like you ripped off a car door, and then you slapped in a yellow door on a red car. It screams. But basically, a user should not be able to tell standard and an app apart. And I have to bring up this link right here to alguidelines.dev. That's where we as a community are trying to follow some development guidelines, but there's also some best practices for this. Another thing that we can do is collect and present issues upon release. one thing I find very unfortunate in the base app is you can go to a sales order, you can add a bunch of lines, and you can press release, and that's all fine. But when you now post the line or post the order, now you're going to get some errors. It could be missing setup, it could be something else. And sadly, as it is currently, I don't see any examples in the base app that does this. But one thing I've done over the years is add a lot of validation on the on that, and then we basically and what I also do, I collect them all. I mean, if there's one way you can really frustrate a user, and then you give them one error, they go fix it, they release again, they get another error, and they fixed 3 errors. Now they're done. Now they've given up. If you have an opportunity to collect a bunch of errors and present them all, and if you use the error message table where you can create a link, so if it's an issue with the customer, if it's an issue with the shipping agent, if it's a whatever, you have a straight link to there. Unfortunately, I don't have an example to show, but something's going to show up on my blog in the semi-near future.
There's a question, Henrik, if I may step in.
Yes.
From Michael Nielsen. Or actually, was it a question, a statement, a comment? I think BC20 with check documents and journals solves much of this issue, which you just are talking about.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was something there. I haven't had a chance to look at that too much, and that's also part of why I didn't want to show any code here, because I saw something was there, but that's it. So I see another question here.
Yeah, there was a question from Peter Konijn. Actually, I think you meant it like that. Would it be safer to prefix action group names to avoid getting in trouble later if Microsoft adds an action group with the same name in base app? You can then use the caption to avoid showing that prefix to the user. I think that.
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly what you should do. You should use your prefix or suffix in the development side of things, but the caption should not have your weird
prefix.
Weird prefix. Yeah.
Clear. Thank you.
And I think I saw one more come up here. Maybe not.
There was a reply more or less from Chris. I don't know exactly the point. Maybe Chris could type something more to it, but you said something and then he wrote, "Come on, give us a chance." I don't know the context anymore. Chris might want to write it down, then we can laugh even louder than we did just now. But it was something, and I saw it coming, but then I lost the connection between the two.
That's okay. I realize I missed one slide here. Another thing that I do very often, and I'll just talk about it, is I use the page management code unit quite a bit. So what I do is when I have generally on a fact box, when I have anything that says, number of blocks, number of this, number of that, I use the page management on drill down. And basically what I do is I set my filters, and then I basically do if I do a count. If the count is 1, I do a find first, and then I run my page management open page modal. And if the quantity is not 1, I just skip the find 1. And what that does is, in all of the instances where the related record is potentially have a card page, it will open straight up to the card page for the 1 record. Or if you have more than 1 record, or 0, it will open the list page. But again, in 9 out of 10 times, when people have to look at something that is related, they want to look at the card anyways. So that's one thing I generally do. I hope, and I know it went a little fast, but I hope I gave you something to think about. Keep your users in mind when you do your development. As I said, just because technically it works does not mean that it actually works. I should also acknowledge that a lot of these screenshots I took using Stefan's code repository. You were about to say something?
No, I say very clear. Yes, we're fast. We discussed it at the time you might need, and it's faster than we even I think estimated. But that's no problem. I mean, this is the story, and I think it was worthwhile sharing. Yeah. Questions? Are there any questions out there? There's nothing on the list that wasn't handled yet, so. Not a lot. It's a bit like being at high school when they tell you that you can go home earlier. So everybody is maybe yelling at the other end of joy.
Could be, or it could be that I'm not sharing anything new with this group. All I can say is I've seen a lot of these issues out there when I've visited. Clients.
Well, it's surely. I think it probably resonates with people, but it's something me myself also once in a while. Even though I want to have focus on, I want to get it working and then forget about the other parts. And surely for myself, I realized again, are there a couple of things I need to pick out and put in my let's say junior training. Which is worthwhile to instruct them on just before they start doing it and maybe doing it wrongly. They at least know how they could do it better.
So Chris actually asked a question, and it reminded me of something that I kind of wanted to bring up as well. So Chris asked, "Are you involved in user manual creation?" And actually, I'm not. I mean, I've written cheat sheets for some clients, but I haven't created manuals. And my attitude towards manuals is a little bit like, I know somebody in the community years ago made a comment about comments in code. Best case scenario, they're correct. And I feel like if you create your flows and your apps in a way that is intuitive, you don't need a manual, right? And I relate a little bit like, so I drive a Tesla Model 3. I was one of the guys who ordered it on day one here in the US, and after waiting 777 days, I finally was able to pick it up. To this day, I still have to explain to people how to open the doors. And to me, that is just pure design flaw, right? If something as rudimentary as opening a door requires explanation, you did it wrong. It may look pretty, but you did it wrong. And that's also my philosophy, when I work in with development for Business Central, right? I mean, and part of making things make sense, or part of making things logical, is that you do it the same way everything else is done. And I kind of want to tell a story from my younger days in this industry. In the early 90s, I was at a job, and I worked with a very skilled nav developer. I was basically I worked under him. He would basically assign me tasks, and I would go do them, and then he would tell me what I did wrong. And that really resonated with me. Or one thing that really resonated with me one time was actually I had figured out in the text-based version of Navigator. I mean, so we're back in those days, on a report to basically emulate the show and hide fields based on a selection. And I showed him this, and I was super proud. Look what I've done. This is really cool. And he looked at it and kind of, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Where did you find this in standard? Oh, I didn't. Okay, then we don't do it either, was his response. And initially when he did it, I was just kind of, rah, 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 this is not right. This is so cool. But that's kind of where. But I've taken that with me my entire career, where you do stuff like like a user would see elsewhere in the system. Oh yes, Peter, thank you for your input here as well. I left out the talking about the tool tips and the teaching tips. The reason is I haven't yet to actually play with the teaching tips myself. So, but that's a good one as well.
You remarked that he gets good feedback on using tooltips from customers, which is of course a good incentive to continue and get into it. But yes, teaching tips is something relatively new. We all need, or most of us still need to get into it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think another one that again, unfortunately, I have not had the chance to work with just yet is telemetry on error messages. So we'll give you a chance to maybe enhance your error messaging, because that's another area where sometimes, I mean, I use test field myself because that is kind of a standard way of doing it. But test field can be a little rudimentary, for lack of a better word, right? Where it just says this field has to be populated. Okay. Why? With what? Sometimes can be a little difficult.
True. Yeah. No.
Anyways, any other questions, comments, concerns, accolades, as I normally say?
Well, Michael Nielsen says, good topic, Henrik. So that's a compliment to you.
Thank you. As I said, I am in the process of writing some of these down in a little more detailed level. So they're going to slowly show up on my blog at the doubleh.dev.
Yeah.
And again, feel free to go to GitHub and steal, copy, or contribute to the PCAL toolbox. I mean, right now it's been some things that I've had to use in my AL development. So an Excel importer and then the progress bar. And again, one of the reasons I did them that way is because now I can create a consistent progress bar, right? So it shouldn't be that if a user executes one function versus the other, that the communication they get on the screen is different.
True.
So,
yeah.
If there's not, let me push the next session. I know you lifted it up as well, but I for one am very excited to hear how Waldo operates his company. So
yeah, and if there's anybody else out there doing things somewhat different, which is of interest to us all, feel free to step in also. Christoph Krieger stepped in, Waldo's now stepping in, probably very logical for him, but I think there are more out there that do have a story on how they do it. And feel free also, if you don't want to, but just share it with me. I could collect it and come up with some things. Nobody has the perfect wheel running. The one is maybe better than the other, but we can learn from all the wheels that are running here. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, and that's quite honestly why I slowly but surely started my blog. I mean, I've been one of those people. I've been here in the trenches for much longer than I care to admit. But been sucking knowledge from everybody else, and I figured now it's probably my time to show something, especially with the influx of people from the GP world, because especially when it comes to these standards, they don't know these standards, nor would they have a reason to have known how we in quotation do things.
Yeah, so. True. So nothing on the list. I'm going to switch to my screen to thank you, Henrik, and thank everybody for being here. Well, let's meet next time. Have a good evening, a good afternoon, good morning. It's still a way to go this day, Henrik. Thanks for being up this early, and I hope sun is going to shine on your side already. It will be on YouTube this evening, and see you next time. So thanks once again.